Well, hello and welcome to the channel. My name's Johnny and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. So, we're going to start the build of this. So this is going to be part one of our OH-13 Sioux helicopter by Italeri in 1/48 scale. And this is a Bell helicopter here. And first thing we're going to do, we're going to begin our build. So, we're going to have to jump down to the bench and take a look at our instructions and see what the first thing to do is. So let's get on down there and get to work on this.
Okay, so here we are with our instructions, and I'm not going to read this. you can read the little history section there if you so desire, and we have those multiple languages there, which we talked about that in the kit review, and we do have our sprue map just in case we need it. So, on to what we're going to actually be doing here. We're going to start right here in step 1. So, steps 1 and 2 has everything to do with building the engine. So, the very first thing we're going to do is build the engine. So, now, you probably, if you've built aircraft before, you know that you need to build and paint things in subassemblies. So, we're going to need some parts, so we're going to grab our steady sprue cutters here. These are nice and sharp and they work very well. And as you can tell, I am being careful. We do have some fragile items here. We don't want to break anything because if we do, we'll have to fix it. And we would prefer not to have to do that. And I do cut the sprue gates off long, leaving those attached to the part, so that we can get in there a little bit closer with our sprue cutters. And that way we won't have very much to actually sand, or at least that's the idea there. So we can get right up next to the part there, and we don't have to worry about having a nub or something there that we're going to have to do a lot of sanding. Just a couple of strokes here with our sanding stick, make sure that everything's nice and flush. And I will go ahead and tell you, if you've not built any Italeri kits before, all of their older kits, I haven't built any new ones. Now, this kit is a 1998 kit, but it's still true to form from the 70s and 80s. Italeri, something about their molding process. They tend to have some edges and stuff that you need to straighten up. And oftentimes when you get two parts that come together, and it's supposed to be square, it's usually not. It's usually got a slight taper to it. And so you'll just have to deal with that. That's kind of the nature of the beast and working on, Italeri kits. So we are going to clean up everything here and make it look good. You can also use the sharp edge of your, in this case, it's an X-Acto knife or an Excel. I think it's an Excel blade. Either way, you can use the edge of it there to scrape down those mold seams and get everything cleaned up. Now, since we're talking about cleaning up parts, and I know we haven't gotten to these yet, but part of my process is I really like to get everything cleaned up before I start my build. And I just want to point this out. Italeri is really bad about this. And it's a dimensional thing with their molds. They just don't line up really good in a lot of the cases. Now, the part of the airframe over here on the left, I've already cleaned most of that up, and then you can see the one on the right. It kind of, all this tubing and everything, it doesn't look good. Because you can see all these ledges and shoulders and stuff that aren't supposed to be there because this is supposed to be a tubular structure. So cleaning that all up is really going to give the model a better, much better, crisper look. So you're going to want to pay attention to all those little areas and get everything cleaned up good. So I just thought this is a good time to mention that so we won't have to worry about parts cleaning up anymore. So we can start our assembly here. So we do have a fan shroud, and there's a cooler that gets attached to it, and it already it doesn't fit right. I mean, you probably wouldn't notice it if you just, went ahead and cemented it on, but it's got a gap there, and it does have a little wiggle room, but I don't think that little bit of wiggle is going to affect how the engine sits on the aircraft, but we do need to probably close that gap up. So we've got a little wedge-shaped nub there that locates our cooler, and I'm just going to take a little bit of that off because I really want that cooler to set flush on our fan shroud, because if it doesn't, it just doesn't look good. So, yeah, that's much better. And we're getting there, though, because it does still have a little bit of a gap, and I don't want the gap. So we're gonna give it a few more strokes here with that sanding stick, get that cleaned up. And you're gonna find that you're gonna have to do that probably with everything in this kit. Just past experience from building Italeri kits, but they've got plenty of polystyrene there that, as you clean everything up, you you still have a model, so it's not that big of a deal. It just takes a little time. So we're going to go ahead and cement this cooler up, put that into place. So we just want to make sure that it's not a little cockeyed or something, just make sure your alignment's good. Get it pressed in there. And that, to me, extra thin is gonna hold it for us. So we're in good shape there. So next up, we do have a fan belt and a couple of pulleys here. Now this part is keyed with a half moon locator tab there and hole, so you don't put it on upside down. That would be bad. So we're going to press that into place. Now later on, we're going to paint that fan belt. So if at this point you would prefer to do your detail painting without it being assembled, then keep that in mind. But I'm going to go ahead and put mine on. Whoops. And hopefully I didn't knock it off. But I'm going to go ahead and put mine on because I just find it easier to paint things when they're really small like that, if they're already on there. Now, when it comes to our engine halves here, as you can see, we got some flash from some ejector pins, and that's on the inside. So you're not going to see it. However, it keeps our engine halves from coming together. So it makes things want to have a gap. And we don't want any gaps around our cylinders, or our engine block. So we need to clean those up. And I think I can just get away with using our sprue cutters here to take care of that. Now with that done, we can go ahead and assemble our two halves of our engine here. It does seem to kind of rock back and forth a little bit there. I mean, it's not perfect, but it'll be all right, because we'll just go ahead and grab a couple of clips here, or clamps. We'll grab some clamps, and we'll press it together. And if we do that, then once the, to me, extra thin wicks down in there and softens the plastic, it should be a nice fit. I don't want any gaps there. All right, so the next part we need to assemble is going to be this little box-looking thing here. I think it's the oil sump for our engine, but since I don't know this engine very well, I can't say for sure, so don't quote me on that. And it does have a little wiggle room, on the alignment pins, so we're just going to make sure that we've got it as flush as we can get it. And you can probably kind of see the those seams right there where the part goes together. They have a slight taper on them there, and you know, it's just not really what we want it to look like. So we're going to go ahead and sand that down smooth on the sides there and kind of take care of that seam line. And once we get that done, and well, yeah, here we are dropping things again. So see, you're not the only one that drops things. So yeah, just pay attention to these little details because it's going to look so much better when we get to paint them up. So I'm going to switch over to the thick cement here for attaching that that oil sump. That's what I'm going to call it, to the bottom of our engine block here. And the reason why I'm using the thick Tamiya cement is because it allows me enough flexibility that I can square these parts up, because that mating surface there on the where the engine block connects to our sump isn't exactly flat. So, which is, I kind of expected that. And I'll just take a little of the excess cement off there. Now for the top of our engine, this is where the rotor is going to be attached. So we have a housing that needs to go up there. Now you do need to pay special attention to which way this is oriented, because it does have a notch in it. And that notch faces, I think it faces towards the tail of the aircraft. So, all right, so let's do some test fitting with these assemblies. I want to make sure that we don't have any issues when we get ready to do our final assembly of this whole thing, because we are going to have to do some painting, and a lot of items need to be painted separately. So here are our valve covers and part of a shroud that goes to one side there. And I'm just checking to make sure that these items are going to fit nicely. If we need to sand them to get everything to go together with a nice close fit, then we'll go ahead and do that. But you do want to check all your parts and make sure that they go together. So this piece here of the engine block, it has two locator ribs. We're going to call them ribs. And it fits okay. So we can go ahead and cement that into place, because we're going to paint this engine all as one well, not the whole engine, but this engine block section as one assembly. So we do have a little circular piece here. I do not know what it is. I think it has something to do with the intake filter. And we also have our exhaust, and this one, it has two exhaust pipes. This particular one, the large one, they did mold a hole in the end of it, but it's kind of too small. I need to thin that out a little bit to make it look better, make it look more like an exhaust pipe. Yeah, that's better. And then we had to drill the one in the angled one here, because it doesn't come with one. So there we go. Little bit of a drill bit there, and you can get that drilled up. And then I'm going to use Tamiya Extra Thin there to get rid of any little fuzzies or anything left over from drilling it. And this one also has some little canister that goes on it. So we'll go ahead and cement that into place. Now when it comes to our exhaust, in step 2, they give us this diagram here that shows us the orientation of these pipes. Well, we need to really pay close attention to that so that we get the angle correct. Now when it comes to putting these pipes together, I'm just going to use the thick cement again. And that thick cement really, really grabs on, and it gives me a little bit of time to move things around and get it situated and adjusted. And once I get the orientation correct, we'll set it aside, and we'll let that set up for a good 30 or 40 minutes before we start fooling with these pipes again, because we don't want to mess up that pipe alignment there. So once I'm satisfied that I'm not going to be messing up that pipe alignment, we need to check the fit here. And the pipes going into the cylinder head don't really touch the cylinder head there on the lower two, because that little canister type thing on the bottom is being interfered with the oil sump. I almost wanted to call it a crankcase, but I think it's an oil sump. Anyway, I'm just going to notch it and give us some clearance so that we can get our pipe alignment. And that's also going to give us an extra little spot where we can cement our pipes into place when it comes time to do that. And that should make it the whole assembly a little bit less fragile. So now I went ahead and glued the crossover here. That's this one pipe, and it does not fit very well at all. As you can see right there, where it joins up together, the angle's wrong, and we do have a small gap there. So yeah, see right there? Yeah, that's not a good look for an exhaust. So we don't want a leaky exhaust. So we'll just go ahead and we'll have to sand and trim that down. And then I just want to double check, make sure everything is good to go after sanding it. So in order to fill that gap, we'll use some perfect plastic putty. Now this is a water-soluble putty, and you guys have seen me use it before, and I like it quite a bit. We have put that on that pipe right there at that union, and I've let it dry. So I know it doesn't look very well at the moment, but when it comes to cleaning this up, we don't have to sand it. We can just use water and a Q-tip or cotton bud, and we can just kind of go over top of it and smooth it out and remove any of the excess perfect plastic putty that's on there. That way it looks more like an actual exhaust pipe. We'll just get rid of that seam that's there. Again, I didn't like that ugly seam. And there we go. So that should paint up fairly nice for us. All right, so when it comes time to paint this, our oil sump actually sets on a plate that is molded into the airframe. So you're not going to see the bottom of this. So I'm just going to drill a hole in it using my Tamiya handy drill there. And the whole idea is to be able to insert a toothpick in there and hold our engine for painting. And I just need to trim it off just a little bit. I don't think that'll hurt my sprue cutters. It's just wood, but I probably shouldn't have done it with my sprue cutters. But there we go. Nice and secure. We can paint that. So here's an element that we actually need to look at. If you notice, right there at that pulley on our fan belt, there's nothing attached. And there's nothing in the instructions, and there is no part that goes there. And I don't know why. I mean, it's even got a little pin on the back of it that you would think is a locator. So that just looks bad. So what I've done is I've taken a piece of sprue here and drilled a hole in the middle of it to fit onto that locator pin, because I think that's probably what it should look like. So that's what we're going to do. Yeah, I know. And I'm not sure if that part is maybe in the way when we finish putting the helicopter together. So I'm not going to cement that into place. I'm going to paint it up separately, and we can just press it in there, you know, and then we can remove it later if we need to. So with that done, we need to get everything ready for painting, and here I'm using the rolled pieces of painter's tape stuck on a piece of cardboard with the sticky side out there. And that'll hold everything. Now I do have to make up a second board so that we can paint the other side. So before we start painting, let's just take a look at some pictures here. Now these are just reference pictures to kind of give you an idea of what the actual engine looks like. Now there is a lot of tubing and wires and stuff that I'm not going to try to reproduce. It's a little much for me, but if you guys would like to, go ahead. All right, so since we know what the color scheme basically is going to look like, we're going to use this German Panzer Gray here as our primer. And I have mixed it up for our airbrush. And this is going to be the color that I use also for black. So with that done, everything primed up. Now, Italeri tells us to paint our engine block, I think flat steel. I'm going to use this silver, metallic silver, and we're not going to paint these tubes. Our intake tubes and our exhaust tubes do not get that flat steel treatment, but since I'm using silver over black, it's going to come out a little bit darker, so there we go. That's kind of what it looks like when you spray that metallic silver over top of black. It comes out a deeper color. So yeah, we do have those painted up. Now for these tubes here, that's our intake tubes and our exhausts. We're going to paint those with this galvanized. And that'll give us a little bit different metallic color there. And pretty much the way painting aircraft engines goes is it's just a battle of grays and silvers. So now Italeri only calls out black and flat steel for our engine. So we're just going to go back in and reestablish that oil sump area there with our simulated black, which is actually German gray. So I'm going to paint that. And that's what the instructions call for, but they only give us those two colors for our entire engine. Everything on the engine is either flat steel or it's black, and then that's it. So by adding these other colors for like our exhaust, that really adds a little bit more detail there. And also these shrouds, if we go back to our reference photos, a lot of times these shrouds here, it goes around our cylinder heads, they were just black metal. So we'll go back in with our German gray there and kind of reestablish that. That'll make it look a little bit better, I think. We'll find out when we get towards the end there. Also, there are these stripes that goes down the cylinder heads. That's part of that shroud as well. So we painted those up with our German dark gray. Here are our cylinder head / valve covers. That looks good. And here's the opposite side. Yeah, I kind of like how that looks. Give it a little bit more pizzazz to our engine there. All right, so we're going to use this flat rubber here from Testors. It is an enamel. And we're going to use that to paint our fan belt. Now, keep in mind that if you prefer to paint these items separately, don't glue it all together or cement it together. That way, it would be easier for you if that's what you like to do. Since it is a small part, though, my thinking is that it's easier to hold on to and to paint this way than it would be if it was separate. But it's a matter of choice. Whatever you prefer to do, that would be fine. And I think this flat rubber is really going to look good on it there. Not that we're going to be able to see much of it once everything's assembled and it's in the aircraft, but it makes me feel good to do it. And in the off chance that it's actually visible, at least it won't look out of place. So that looks pretty good. Now, I think we need to attend to that cooler there on the side. Some of the photos show that cooler with a brighter silver around the edge of it on the frame of that cooler. So we're just going to use that tester's silver to paint just the frame of it there. I think that's going to add a little bit more to it. And then we can also use this exact same color and paint that tube that comes off of it. I think it's a drain line, probably used for servicing, or I don't know if it overheats. Maybe it's not an overflow, it's on the bottom, so whatever it is. All right, back to our thick cement here. I'm going to use that to start attaching our parts, and the reason why is because I don't want to have to do a lot of scraping of these painted areas to use the Tamiya Extra Thin. And this Tamiya Thick Cement is an actual model cement. It's not a solvent. So it will grab on and hold our parts into place for us. Make sure I don't have anything on my fingers. I end up with a fingerprint, and we don't want to do that. So we need to be careful. Keep our fingers nice and clean. So that's our fan shroud attached there. Kind of press it into place there, making sure that everything's good. And on the opposite side, we do have some tubes to attach. So I'm going to use the thick cement there. And this should be the intakes. And they do have a specific direction. You can get it upside down, so just watch that in the instructions. And I just want to make sure it's pressed down, and then we've got good contact there with our cylinder heads. Don't need any spaces there. That would look a little look a little funny, and we don't want a funny engine. So, all right, so now we can go ahead and attach our cylinder heads. And again, using the thick cement for that, it's very durable, and we don't have to worry about our parts falling off later on. And you just got to line it up and get it pressed in. It is a little tight there, but yeah, there we go. That's going to fit nice. And even since we had fitted all of this before, you got to remember paint has thickness. And once you get the paint on there, those dimensions can change a little bit. And if it becomes necessary to scrape some of that paint off on those contact areas there, especially where those shields go up against the fan shroud, you may have to do that. But this one's going together okay if I can just get it pressed down into place there. Now, if you're worried about whether or not the parts are going to stay, you can always scrape the paint off and use Tamiya Extra Thin, or you could use CA glue too, which other people know it as super glue, but you know, CA glue would work to hold these parts. So that's what we've got so far. It's coming along nicely. So I am going to stick our little handmade part onto that top pulley there on our engine. Now, like I said before, it's a tight enough fit that I don't have to worry about it falling out. And I'm not going to cement it into place just in case we need to pry it back out of there if it actually is an obstruction on our airframe, which we're not going to know until we actually get the airframe put together. So, either way, we're prepared for that. And that looks pretty good. Yeah, at least it doesn't, that pulley's just not dangling in space there. All right, so now we can go ahead and put our exhaust pipe on. Little bit of that thick cement there on the oil sump, and then we're going to go ahead and put it on the ends of all of our pipes. That way it'll have plenty of area to grab. And once we get that, we just have to put it into place. And if we did a good job with all of our alignment and everything, then this, hopefully this will fit into the airframe. I do kind of worry about that a little bit, but I think it's going to be all right. It'll be fine. We'll be in good shape. So there we are, all painted up. And I just want to double check and make sure everything is aligned and not tilted, and because we want to straighten it out now before everything sets up. So to give you a sense of scale, each one of these squares on my cutting mat is 1 inch by 1 inch. And as you can see, our engine actually fits fairly comfortable inside a 1 inch by 1 inch cube, except for the pipes there. So that is a fairly small engine. But I think it looks pretty good. I'm glad that we decided to use different silvers and grays. Just makes it look a little bit more like a real engine. Yeah, see? My thumb's almost the same size. So, with that done, we need to get rid of all the shiny spots that's on that engine. So we're going to go ahead and coat everything with this matte acrylic from Vallejo.
So, there we go. We got our thumb size engine there. And I did use a little bit of that silver on the valve covers there, just to brighten them up a little bit more. There. So, yeah, thumb size engine there. That's going to look really good in the airframe there, because it's all open, below the fuel tanks there where the engine's sitting, and that'll look really good. So, that's the end of part one. So, had a little fit issues and stuff, but I kind of expected that. And older Italeri kits. I haven't built any new Italeri kits. So I can't tell you what the actual mold quality is on those. Maybe I'll find one and we'll do one of them. But so we're off to a good start. So special thanks to all my subscribers, because of you guys. I keep making these videos, and if you're new to the channel, I hope today I earned your subscription. So that will do it for this video. And I hope to see you guys next Friday. So until then, you guys stay safe.